Why Meghan?
Well, because she posed a challenge to the royal family, and she's a fascinating person. I mean, she's a person who started from nothing and has become a world global star. And that route to the top has never really been properly reported and examined and investigated.
When I was pregnant, and Harry says, oh, there was a little discussion before we got married. Well, something's wrong right there. But anyway.
Well, of course, that was brilliant of you to bring that clip up, because the body language just showed her discomfort as she dug deeper into her own hole. I mean, the truth is this, that there are two truths. The first truth is that the conversation, I'm told and I believe, was very early on in their relationship when Harry is bowled over by Meghan, is desperately in love, and already is talking about marriage.
They picked the wrong fight this time. Meghan Markle's legal team may have thought another warning letter would scare people into silence, but going after Lady Colin Campbell and Tom Bower is a whole different game. Lady C has spent decades around royal circles, hearing things, storing things, and remembering things other people wish would stay buried. And Tom Bower is not some random voice online throwing out messy gossip. He has built a name by digging into powerful people and pulling uncomfortable details into the light. That is why this moment feels so explosive, because here is the real issue. When people like that get pushed, they usually do not back off. They dig deeper. And if Prince Harry ever seriously tried to take this fight into a courtroom, the spotlight would get very bright, very fast. Suddenly, every disputed timeline, every private message, every official record, every missing detail people have argued over for years could be dragged into legal review.
Well, look, Radar Online, in fairness, they do quote you and say Royal Author Lady Colin Campbell recently challenged the conspiracy of silence and misinformation surrounding both Tom.
Is it possible the ghostwriter dislikes Harry? I know people who know him. I've heard interesting things about him. I know he's, as I have said previously, very into the 12-step program and the whole druggy alky business. It is not the job of a ghostwriter to do anything but put the thoughts of the incompetent who requires a ghostwriter.
That is why so many watchers think this would not just be another royal PR mess. It could turn into a full-blown public nightmare for the Sussex brand. Lady C's response said everything without needing a big speech. Let him sue me. 4 cold words. And that was enough to make people stop and stare. No panic, no shaky energy, no backing down, just calm confidence. And that calm is exactly what makes it land so hard. Because when somebody sounds that sure, people instantly start asking what they know that everyone else does not. Then Tom Bower added even more tension to the whole thing. He said checks had already been made involving hospitals in both London and California, and according to him, what stood out most was not what was found, but what was not found. That line alone set off another wave of chatter, because once people hear there are gaps, missing confirmations or weak paper trails, the questions start multiplying fast. And once those questions start, they do not slow down easily. So now the conversation has shifted into dangerous territory. What exactly is being protected? What are Lady C and Bower hinting at so confidently? And why do online critics keep circling back to the same demand again and again, saying a simple test or a simple release of clear records could shut the whole thing down overnight? That is the part keeping this story alive.
She never intended to go to the Portland hospital. She intended to have the baby at home. We know that they deceived the public about the birth data and time of the whole event. So, and also, you know, even it goes down to the lawyer saying that in that statement, when they have that long attack on the Mail, which is astonishing, that Meghan, we know she lied.
On Bower, where he doesn't go there. But he does go there as far as the fact that they wanted to keep the birth private and all the secrecy around that, and even the fact that...
Not proof, not closure, not certainty, but the fact that the doubts never seem to fully go away. You and I both know how this kind of move works. Some people send legal threats not because they want a courtroom showdown, but because they hope the threat itself is enough to make everybody freeze, fold, and shut up. That strategy can work on nervous reporters, smaller creators, or people who do not have the resources to fight back. But it gets risky when the people on the other side actually want the battle, because then the pressure flips, and the one making the threat can end up trapped by their own move. That is why the word discovery scares so many public figures. Once a defamation case gets serious, the fight stops being about headlines and starts being about records, messages, timelines, notes, and sworn testimony. Lawyers get access to the stuff PR teams spend years trying to keep controlled. Private communications can be examined, official documents can be challenged, public statements can be compared against internal ones. And if there are contradictions, even small ones, they suddenly matter a lot more than they did before. That is why legal analysts keep saying the same thing. If Harry ever goes all the way with a case like this, he may be opening a door that is much harder to close than he expects.
That Samantha only called herself Markle when Meghan was engaged to Harry, which Samantha says is a total lie. Interestingly, Samantha also says that Meghan's story about having a Ford Explorer where she could only get in through the boot was also untrue. She goes through a whole load of Meghan's lies. So by July, that is what the judge has said, these depositions, this cross-examination of Meghan will take place for the trial to start in October. So Meghan really has a problem because until today, her lawyers have been saying this is so ridiculous, we refuse to even engage with Samantha Markle.
Because in court, emotion is not enough. Anger is not enough. Reputation management is not enough. You need evidence, consistency, and a version of events that can survive direct scrutiny. And critics say that is exactly where this whole saga could get shaky. People are already pointing to the Samantha Markle lawsuit as a preview of how ugly things can get once legal pressure becomes real. For years, Meghan's defenders brushed that case off as noise, but once depositions, deadlines, and sworn answers enter the picture, the mood changes completely. Court strips away the glossy image and forces everything into a much harsher frame. It becomes less about who sounded better on TV and more about who can back up what they said when the pressure is on. And that is why this moment matters so much. Lady Colin Campbell and Tom Bower are not being treated by their supporters as random gossip voices chasing clicks. Their reputations, fair or not, come from being seen as people who keep files, remember details, and know how to frame a case in a way that sounds serious. Lady C has talked about the royal family for years and built an audience that believes she catches patterns early. Tom Bower has built his image as a bulldog investigator who goes after people with money.
Choose people who don't want to be written about on the whole, whose lives are shrouded in mystery and they want to hide their secrets. And I just love digging away to find out what they don't want us to know. I wrote 4 years ago a book about Prince Charles, and it was a story about how he had rehabilitated himself after Diana's death and how Camilla also had to be rehabilitated. And it was a #1. It was a fascinating story. So when Meghan came along into the scene, I just thought, this is fascinating. How is this going to play out? To tell the truth, I spoke to very few friends of Meghan because she put a fatwa on anyone talking to me who she could. So I sent off dozens and dozens of emails to her friends, and most of them didn't even reply. And obviously I spoke to her father, who loves her still very much, and said, you know, in the end, whatever she is, she's still my daughter. You can't beat the real story. I mean, that's the excitement of writing these sort of books, that in the end, nothing beats the truth, the real fact.
Status and influence. That combination makes this standoff feel much more dangerous than the usual media drama. What makes it even more intense is the kind of material they are said to be focused on. Not fluffy gossip, not fashion chatter, not social media nonsense, but timelines, announcements, records, hospital references, and who knew what when. According to their public comments and hints, they are looking at the same type of paper trail that usually clears things up in major public controversies. And when people believe that Trail looks incomplete or confusing, the speculation gets louder fast. Lady C, in particular, has leaned hard into the idea that there are still unanswered questions around what was publicly presented at the time. She has spoken about private communications, people close to the situation, and details she believes deserve more scrutiny. That does not prove her right, of course, but it does explain why her tone has stayed so bold. She does not sound like someone tossing out random guesses. She sounds like someone who thinks the story has weak spots and wants them tested. What also fueled the debate was the break from royal tradition. A lot of people expected the usual level of palace transparency that had surrounded other royal births in the past. Named doctors, clearer announcements, and the kind of polished process that leaves little room for confusion. But when that familiar pattern did not fully appear in the way some expected, critics filled the silence with their own theories. And once public trust starts slipping, even normal details can get twisted into something bigger. Then came the endless online analysis of appearances, timelines, and body language, and that is when things really spun out. Retired nurses, former midwives, medical commentators, and armchair analysts all started weighing in with their own opinions about photos, movements, and public moments. Some claimed certain appearances looked inconsistent. Others said the conclusions were overblown and unfair. But once that kind of debate takes off, it creates a storm that becomes almost impossible to control. Even the wording of the birth announcements has been dragged into the spotlight. Lady C pointed to the phrase, "born for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex," and argued that the wording sounded unusual enough to raise eyebrows. Her critics say that is reading far too much into formal language, while her supporters insist official wording always matters, especially in royal matters. That is how intense this has become. Every phrase, every absence, every tiny detail gets treated like a clue. And then there is the media angle, which only made everything feel even stranger. Questions about exclusives, access, and who was allowed into which room added more noise to an already chaotic story. None of it brought closure. None of it calmed the conversation down. It just kept adding layer after layer until the entire thing became one giant cloud of suspicion, denial, interpretation, and counterattack. That is why Meghan's legal team may have made a brutal miscalculation here, because if the goal was to scare critics into silence, it may have done the exact opposite. It gave the whole argument fresh oxygen, fresh attention, and fresh energy. And if this ever does move beyond threats and into real legal action, the story could get much messier than either side expects. At that point, the headlines will not be about image anymore. They will be about what can actually be shown, challenged, and defended when the cameras are really on. When Archie was first introduced to the world, the rollout already felt unusual to a lot of people watching closely. The image, the timing, the access, the media handling, all of it sparked questions that never fully disappeared. Tom Bower's view was blunt and sharp. In his telling, the silence was not really about principle. It was about control, value, and presentation. Privacy in that reading was not just something being protected, it was something being packaged. And once people started looking at it that way, every carefully managed public moment began to feel a lot more strategic than natural. Then came one of those tiny public slip-ups that critics still bring up because it sounded so awkward in the moment. Shortly after Archie's birth, during that interview near the stables, Harry made a comment suggesting the baby had changed so much in 2 weeks. Then Meghan, standing right beside him, corrected it with 2 words that instantly made people raise an eyebrow. 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 days. That small mismatch may have sounded harmless to some people, but to others, it became one more detail added to a growing pile of moments that did not line up cleanly. And what made it worse is that nobody really pressed them on it afterward. So the moment just hung there, unexplained, feeding more talk than it probably ever should have. That is the part that changed everything for a lot of watchers. It was not one giant revelation. It was a string of little things, little cracks, little awkward contradictions, little moments where the official image and the public reaction did not move in the same direction. And once people start noticing those small cracks, they stop looking at the story as a neat package. They start picking it apart piece by piece, line by line, clip by clip. That is exactly what happened here, and now the scrutiny is far more intense than anyone on their side probably expected. Harry, according to people said to be close to the situation, is deeply angry about how far this has gone. The picture being painted by those reports is of a man under huge pressure, restless, exhausted, and consumed by the non-stop chatter surrounding his family. Articles, reaction videos, comment threads, interviews, clips from old appearances, all of it being replayed and re-examined by strangers across the internet. And from his point of view, that must feel brutal, because for him, this is not just gossip. This is his name, his family, his image, and the life he has spent years trying to build away from the institution he once blamed for so much pain. That is why the legal threat matters so much. Reports have suggested his team has at least considered stronger action against Lady Colin Campbell and Tom Bower, and the response from both of them was the kind of response that instantly makes a story even hotter. Lady C did not panic. She did not soften her tone. She did not hide behind vague wording or careful legal padding. She just said, "Let him sue me." That is a cold line, and she knew exactly how it would land, because it sends one message louder than anything else could. She is not scared of what comes next. And Tom Bower gave the same kind of energy. No retreat, no nervous walk back, no sudden silence. Instead, he doubled down on the idea that pressure would not make his material disappear. He has presented himself as a man sitting on sources, records, testimony, and details that he believes can survive scrutiny. In other words, if the Sussex side thought legal pressure alone would shut the whole thing down, both Lady C and Bower are making it clear they see that move as a bluff, or at least as a gamble that could backfire badly. That is where the legal danger becomes very real. Because a defamation fight does not work like a TV interview or a glossy magazine cover. In that setting, you cannot just say something is false and expect the room to move on. You have to prove it. You have to show records, present facts, explain contradictions, and hold your version of events together under direct challenge. That is what makes people so obsessed with the idea of discovery. Once that door opens, the fight shifts from image management to document management, and that is a totally different battlefield. Discovery is the word that keeps coming up for a reason. It means lawyers can demand records, communications, timelines, notes, and material that public figures usually work very hard to keep behind the curtain. It means statements can be compared against other statements. It means dates can be tested. It means public claims can be measured against private exchanges. That is why so many commenters online are almost begging for a lawsuit at this point, not because they care about the legal theory, but because they believe a courtroom is the one place where polished messaging loses its usual power. And that belief is spreading because people think the Sussex media style works best in controlled spaces. A friendly interview, a prepared statement, a dramatic sit-down with a powerful host, a glossy documentary, a well-timed press move. Those are all places where tone can do a lot of the work. But a courtroom is different. You do not get to float above the details there. You have to deal with them. Every awkward point, every disputed timeline, every public inconsistency can be brought back and laid out in order. And once that happens, even little things can suddenly feel massive. That is why the irony of this whole thing hits so hard. This is the same couple who built a huge part of their public image on ideas like honesty, truth, openness, and finally telling their side of the story. They presented themselves as people who were breaking silence, speaking up, and refusing to be controlled by the old royal machine. That framing won them sympathy, deals, and attention. But now, critics are asking why the same passion for openness suddenly seems to disappear when the questions become more uncomfortable. That contrast is what keeps feeding the backlash. The palace, meanwhile, has stuck to its usual icy style. No dramatic defense, no full-throated support, no public war. Just that familiar institutional language that sounds polite while revealing almost nothing. We do not engage in speculation. On paper, it is a neutral line. In practice, it leaves everybody to fill in the blanks on their own. And when the palace goes that quiet, royal watchers do what they always do. They assume the silence means more than the words ever could. That is also why people keep saying this story goes beyond personal drama. It brushes against a much bigger issue: one rooted in royal rules and succession law. For centuries, the monarchy has treated legitimacy as something that must not be vague. The phrase critics keep returning to is born of the body, because in old royal language, that wording carries huge weight. It is not just a detail, it is part of the structure that underpins succession itself. So once a controversy starts touching that area, the tone changes fast. It stops sounding like celebrity gossip and starts sounding, at least to some people, like a constitutional question. Now, to be fair, raising a question is not the same as proving it. That matters, and it should be said clearly. A lot of the noise around this story comes from interpretation, suspicion, public commentary, and the reading of patterns. But what gives the story force is that the questions have never been fully buried, and the figures pushing them are not backing off. So critics keep asking, if this is all nonsense, why not shut it down in the cleanest possible way? Why let speculation grow bigger year after year instead of crushing it once and for all? That question becomes even louder when people compare how the Sussex children are presented publicly with how William and Catherine's children have been shown over time. With George, Charlotte, and Louis, the public has seen a steady stream of images, appearances, balcony moments, school day photos, and visible ties to the family structure. With Archie and Lilibet, the public picture has been much more limited and tightly controlled. There can be many reasons for that, of course, including privacy and protection, but in an atmosphere already full of suspicion, the lack of access does not calm people down. It pushes them even deeper into speculation. And through all of this, critics keep landing on the same proposed solution again and again. They say the answer is simple, immediate, and decisive. Release what would settle the matter clearly, or take whatever step would permanently silence the story. Lady C has pushed that view. Bauer has pushed that view. Comment sections across every platform are packed with ordinary viewers repeating that same idea with growing impatience. Their argument is brutally simple. If the accusations are unfair, prove them wrong in a way nobody can argue with. That is why the absence of a clean shutdown has become part of the story itself. Every day that passes without a move strong enough to bury the issue gives critics more room to talk. Every legal warning instead of direct clarity makes some people feel more certain that clarity is exactly what the Sussex side does not want. That may not be fair, but it is how public suspicion works. Silence rarely stays neutral for long. Eventually, people start reading it as strategy, fear, or both. Tom Bauer has been especially sharp when talking about the money side of all this. In his framing, the issue is not just reputation, it is revenue. Harry and Meghan's post-royal life has depended heavily on a brand image that sells a very specific story: the loving family, the modern couple, the brave truth-tellers, the glamorous outsiders who walked away from power and still won. That image has commercial value. It fuels documentaries, interviews, speeches, partnerships, media deals, and public interest. So if that image starts cracking, even a little, the financial effect could be serious. And right now, those cracks do not look small to their critics. Each new question, each revived clip, each contradictory detail, each public challenge from a figure like Lady C or Bauer chips away at the polished image they have tried to maintain. That is why Bauer's tone has been so direct. He sees a couple trying harder and harder to lock down the narrative because the narrative is the asset. And when the asset starts wobbling, every response becomes more urgent, more aggressive, and more revealing. Lady C went at the financial side from another angle, and her comments landed hard too. She has argued that Meghan likely entered the marriage believing Harry represented massive independent wealth, only to discover that much of his real security was tied to the very royal structure they later attacked. That is a savage point, and one her audience loved because it frames the whole saga as both emotional and transactional. Whether you agree with her or not, you can see why that line hit so hard. It turns the fairy tale image into a trap story, and trap stories always spread fast online. In that reading, they are both boxed in now. They need attention because attention keeps the brand alive. But the attention is turning nasty, and every attempt to manage it seems to create even more interest in the questions they want shut down. They need the spotlight, but the spotlight now feels more like an interrogation lamp than a red carpet. That is a brutal place for any public couple to be, especially one whose whole business model depends on emotional trust and audience sympathy. So this is where the standoff sits right now. Lady Colin Campbell and Tom Bower are not backing down. If anything, the legal noise seems to have made them more confident, more pointed, and more willing to frame their challenge in sharper terms. They are acting like people who believe the pressure is finally shifting in their favour, and that alone should worry anyone trying to keep this story contained. At the same time, the wider legal and royal context makes the whole thing feel even heavier. The Samantha Markle deposition has already added another layer of formal scrutiny around Meghan's public claims. The palace remains silent. Commentators keep talking about constitutional implications. Online audiences keep replaying old clips and old wording. And above all of it, those 4 words from Lady Colin Campbell still hang in the air like a dare. Let him sue me. That is the line people keep repeating because it captures the whole mood of this fight in one shot. So now the big question is staring everyone in the face. Does Harry actually go through with it? Does he really drag this into court, where records matter more than feelings, and where polished storytelling cannot save a weak case? Or does the threat stay exactly where some critics think it belongs, as pressure, noise, and intimidation meant to make the questioning stop without ever risking full exposure? That is the move everyone is waiting on now. And if he does follow through, what do you think comes out when the spotlight gets even brighter? What details hold up? What claims fall apart? And who ends up regretting the fight most? Drop your thoughts in the comments right now because this story is getting hotter by the day and I want to hear where you stand. Hit like if you want more deep dives like this, share this with somebody who has been following every twist in this royal drama, and subscribe with notifications on so you do not miss what comes next, because this chapter is moving fast and the next twist could land any minute.